Many people today imagine that Africa was always colonized, or was always the underdog, was always bad news. And that is not the case. The kingdoms of Ghana, of Mali, of Songhai, of Kanem, Borno, were as spectacular as anything that Europe had to show at that time. The question then is, what happened to Africa? If you take, for instance, Benin, the kingdom of Benin in Nigeria, when it was visited in the 16th century by Dutch travelers and traders, we have the words they wrote at the time. They compared Benin, the city of Benin, very favorably with Amsterdam. At that point, there was no question about the European being the boss in Africa. But when you move then to the 19th century, the situation has changed. That Benin that was described in very favorable terms in the 16th century was now called the City of Blood in the 19th century by the British, just before they overran it. And what happened to Africa was simply the devastation of the slave trade. That was what caused the weakening, the devastation of Africa. So that by the end of the 19th century, when Europe decided to take Africa over, it was easy. The consequences of the colonization of Africa go on to this day. The colonization itself was made possible by the devastation of the slave trade which had happened before it. Why did they allow themselves to be taken? I think if one answer has to be given, it is the gun. It's the position of the gun. I think that is what made it possible. You will find all kinds of fancy statements about the Africans selling themselves. In fact, one professor of history at Stanford was saying not so long ago on television, that the Europeans did not, they were at the coast, they didn't go inland. The Africans brought their brothers down to the coast. And I want to ask him, what were the Europeans doing in the coast of Africa, thousands of miles from their home? They weren't simply there for the tan, to be tanned by the sun. They came down there with the gun. Once the country had been shattered and destroyed, then anarchy and disorder reigned. And at some point it became a question of I sell you or you sell me. If I don't capture you and sell, you capture me and sell, see? And that's the point at which it suits European historians to argue that it was the Africans who brought their brothers down to the coast. But if you go to the beginning, you'll find that the need, the requirement, the quest came from Europe. There was slavery everywhere in the world before, but on a small scale, everywhere. People went to war and captured their enemies and used them for all kinds of domestic purposes. But nothing even approaching the transatlantic slave trade has ever happened in the history of the world before. And one can't, and it is so horrendous that it doesn't surprise me that people want to disclaim responsibility, to put it on somebody else, to put it on the victim. If you do something like that, you don't want to accept that you did it. And that's really where we are. It's a very long and tortuous story, but someday it will be told.
Chinua Achebe sees his life lived at the crossroads of cultures. Dangerous crossroads, because, as he says, a man might perish there wrestling with multiple-headed spirits. He might also be lucky and return to his people with the boon of prophetic vision. He also believes in the crucial role of language to the creation of society. According to his culture, the art of conversation is regarded very highly, and proverbs are the palm oil with which words are eaten.